Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Marwan Forzley. He's the CEO of Veem, a global payment network for small and medium-sized businesses, released its Small Business Sentiment Report, providing a snapshot of sentiment among U.S. small business owners in light of COVID-19. Marwan, welcome to Trade Talks. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And tell us more about the 2020 State of Small Business Survey.
Yeah, let me give you context on what we do and how we got into the survey. So we're, as you mentioned, we do global payments for small businesses. We help businesses around the world to pay and get paid. We have a couple 100,000 businesses that use the platform. And what we do, we generally do these surveys to get a pulse from the customer base on what they're seeing, how they're feeling about various things related to the economy and to their views on the global business. One thing that was super interesting is when we did the survey, we found that COVID actually created two different worlds, and they're very different from each other. So one world is doing very well, and that tends to be e-commerce, online business services, trade, anything that has to do with global trade, import, export, that's all doing well. And then there's a world that's, trying to figure out what to do with all this. And that has to do with the 6 feet apart formula. Anything that requires physical exchanges of goods and services, like travel, like a gym, like a restaurant, is really struggling and trying to figure out, wow, this happened, what do I do next? So the sentiments tend to be kind of opposite to each other. One is bullish and upbeat about the future, and that tends to be anything virtual. They tend to be very bullish about things. And the ones that are requiring that physical exchange, they're really, struggling, trying to figure out how, when is the recovery going to happen, how long it's going to take. That's very evident in the survey.
Let's review the impact to the supply chain and what are small businesses doing to offset any disruption?
Yeah, that's a super interesting trend as well. We've seen some businesses look to change their suppliers and reconfigure their supply chain. Some started looking at other products for adjacent markets. Some repositioned the business to benefit from the new trends. Like I'll give you an example of something like that. We have one of our customers designs clothes and high-end. And that business got affected because there's no stores that are open and they're gonna have a hard time selling the stuff they produce. But they repurposed the entire business to produce very high-end masks, like elegant looking masks. And then overnight, they just went from what do I do to how do I keep up? Because there's quite a bit of demand going on in the market for, the more elegant looking masks. And so that's an example of repurposing what you do today in a very different context to benefit from the situation you've been dealt with. And so we're seeing all kinds of things like that. I put them into two different buckets. One bucket is optimization of supply chain and reconfiguring it to get better P&L, essentially. And the second one is repurposing what you do to be better located in a market that's going to serve you well, given the dynamics, and it's better than what you have today. So these are the two different segments we see.
How many applied for the Small Business Association PPP loan, and what was the top priority for the fund?
We did this to help our businesses essentially benefit from being on Veem, to streamline the application process with SBA, because that whole thing, when it happened, there was a very little guidance from SBA. Yep. And so we kind of like rolled with the flow and we started working on it. And essentially we have information on the business, authentication of the business, and we have data on their transaction history. So we have information on them that we could use to streamline that information and give it to the bank to then pass it to SBA to underwrite the loan. What was remarkable about that is, the whole thing was done up so quickly that, applications started coming and guidance from all the various parties, whether it's the banks or SBA, was not exactly that clear. And so we had to all adapt on the fly. And there was a whole bunch of scenarios where actually nobody knew what exactly is the best way to deal with them. And so everybody was learning on the fly. And so the way we all operate is, but whatever we learn, whether it's from the banks or SBA, we pass it to the customers. And sometimes it was surprising to the customer because they were, one day they were told that this will be, you do this, and then the other day you'd have to do something else. And so, there was adaptation along the way that happened across the entire ecosystem, from the customer to the service providers to the bank to the SBA. But it's something we put together to help these businesses, benefit from the program that the government put together.
All right, Marwan, thank you so much for the insight and for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.